I think Gestalt, Steam, and Cinder is genuinely an indie game of the year contender. Remember, all of these are my thoughts and opinions on Gestalt, Steam, and Cinder. While it doesn't do anything extraordinarily new or like revolutionary for the Metroidvania genre, it's a solid entry into the genre. While the game is mainly a Metroidvania with its combat, level design, and ability systems, it leans heavily into other genres as well. Things like its skill tree come from RPGs like Path of Exile, which is a big influence for that, and it has a Souls-like healing system. And I think the skill tree is one of the things that kind of sets Gestalt, Steam, and Cinder apart from other Metroidvanias. Most Metroidvanias like Hollow Knight and 9 Years of Shadow will use an upgrade system instead of a skill tree. You beat a boss, get a new ability, then beat a side boss or another main boss later on to get an upgrade to that power. While Gestalt does do this with like air dashes and stuff, it also does something a bit different. Instead of upgrading your power from a boss later on, you can upgrade it by using ability points for it to have new interactions, like 3 bullets instead of 1. And I really like how they designed the skill tree. It's very much inspired from like Path of Exile and how they do their skill trees and class trees, but it's got its own little flair to it. While the skill tree is mostly just stat upgrades like increased gun and blade damage, or crit percent upgrades, or like life upgrades, some upgrades change how a skill works, like the aforementioned 3 bullet skill. Initially, you only have access to the bottom center of the skill tree, but as you progress through Gestalt's story and unlock the other abilities like double jump and Tesla bullets, these unlock the sides of the skill tree. Then to unlock the skills that modify the different abilities, you have to unlock the nodes on either side of them to gain access to the area that they're in to go and unlock them. I think it's an interesting way of doing the skill tree. There's also the accessory system, which are mostly just stat upgrades, and you can have 4 of them on by the end of the game. Using the blacksmith, you're able to combine different ones and make just an all-around better accessory. And that's mostly how you boost your stats and increase your character's power. While I don't feel like you ever get like overpowered with these systems, the game's combat is never that hard. And even though the game's combat is like, it's not hard, I still really enjoyed the combat in Gestalt. It's a simple, fast-paced combat system. You have your main attack, which is a light attack combo, that in the beginning of the game, it starts with the ability to do 3 attacks in a row. And I think by the end of the game, you can get up to like 6 through the skill tree. I don't think I ever used like all 6 attacks unless I stunned a boss. And that's about it for using that, because other enemies are far too quick for you to be able to hit all 6 of them without getting hit in return. There's also your heavy attack and your ranged attacks, which both take, I'm going to call them bullet points, but I think they're called power points in the game, which you only have 4, or you can get up to 4 of them at a time, which basically, if you're doing a heavy attack, it uses one of them up. If you're doing a ranged attack, like, you know, firing a regular bullet or firing a Tesla bullet that damages the enemy shields, it uses that up. But it is fairly easy to get back by just attacking enemies. And that'll build up your amount of bullets you can shoot and stuff like that. It's a fairly simple combat system. There's also 2 dodging mechanics for combat. One's a forward dodge and one's a backstep, which both are used to dodge attacks. But I'm going to be honest, I don't know if I ever used the backstep to dodge an attack. I'm just so used to, you know, diving forward. And the backstep is kind of the same problem I had in 9 Years of Shadow, which I haven't covered yet, but that might be coming soon. So the reason I enjoyed the combat in Gestalt is because of its simplicity. You can quickly recognize the attack patterns of enemies and adapt to them. Each area introduces like 2 to 3 new enemies, which all have their own types of attacks. Then you have the bosses, which really highlights their combat system and the simplicity of it. Each boss is different enough in the way they attack and how they move, but they're all very similar because they can all be beaten in the same way. Either you just grind them down with attacks, or you hit them with enough Tesla shots to break their shield and stun them, and then you just beat the crap out of them and rinse and repeat when they get the shield back. Like I said, it's simplistic, but it is a solid combat system that I really enjoyed. I also enjoyed Gestalt's level design, even though it didn't feel like a lot of other Metroidvanias. It felt more like a 2D side-scroller RPG than a Metroidvania. There were very few times where I felt the need, after getting a new power, to return to an already completed area. Like, it never felt like I needed to go there again. In a lot of Metroidvanias, there's normally an area or two in each section that you can't pass until you've gotten a specific power-up that appears later in the game. But in Gestalt, which kind of runs more like an RPG than a Metroidvania, it wasn't really the case. Because, like I said, Gestalt is a very narrative-based Metroidvania compared to something like Hollow Knight, which is much more of an exploration-based Metroidvania. And I do kind of consider Gestalt more of a RPG than I do a Metroidvania because of its story and how they handle the story and the Metroidvania parts. And that's honestly one of Gestalt's strongest aspects, are its story and art style. The art style is reminiscent of classic Metroidvanias with the 32-bit art style, and I really like the look of it. I think the game looks gorgeous, and its steampunk setting works out so well and is ingrained into every part of the game. Every area is distinct, and you can easily tell where you are. I've never lost my character when in a fight with a boss like I have in some other games that try to emulate this 32-bit style, but they add in a crap ton of particle effects and you just lose yourself. I never had that with Gestalt. Everything about this game's art style I really like, and the story is good. It's really short, at right around 6 hours or so for a full playthrough, but it's interesting. It might even be like 10 hours if you want to go and like fully 100% it. Maybe, but that could also be pushing it. Like, the story keeps a lot of stuff very vague for a while, but then, you know, it starts to fall in place fairly quickly after like the 4th area. I don't want to talk about it too much and spoil things, so I'm going to just leave it there. I do like the story, and I do suggest playing the game for the story. There is something I wish for with the story, though. I wish there was a more kind of a definitive ending point to it, though. The ending kept that vagueness that was permeating kind of the whole story of the game, while ending on a cliffhanger to set up a second game or DLC, which I would very much welcome because I thought the game was really good, and I would love to go back to this world and play more and just learn more about it. Overall, I would put Gestalt, Steam, and Cinder into the I love it category for my ranking system. While I would like Metamorphosis games to add a harder difficulty so the combat is a bit more challenging, there's nothing that I find outright bad about the game. I would honestly go back and play this maybe in like 6 months because it's got a solid story, solid mechanics, and decently good level design. Like, I don't think it sits at like the top of the Metroidvania list with stuff like Hollow Knight, but I think it's like maybe a step or two below that. And that's my opinion on Gestalt, Steam, and Cinder. If you like the video, please do all the algorithm stuff. Like, subscribe, leave a comment on your thoughts about Gestalt, either from playing it or from just watching my video and going and looking at what there is in the game. But yeah, that's all I got. And most importantly, I hope you have a royal day or a royal night, whatever it is for you right now.